The harvest whisper. The road curled through the mountains, narrowing with every turn. Lina stared out the window, her fingers tight around the camera on her lap. Autumn had arrived early here. Trees blazed with gold and crimson, as if someone had set the forest alight from within. Marko drove slowly, carefully swerving around the potholes of the battered road.
Are you sure this is the way?
He asked, eyes glued to the path ahead.
Course it is. The village of Vershyna. It was mentioned as far back as the 19th century. They still perform a harvest ritual no one has ever filmed.
Lina checked her camera settings, excitement sharpening her voice.
This could be the perfect documentary.
Marko didn't answer. For the past 2 weeks, something had been gnawing at him. An unshakable heaviness in his chest, a reasonless anxiety. But Lina was on fire. She always burned bright when work was involved. He'd long made peace with the fact that her true passion belonged to the lens, not to him. The village appeared without warning, as if it had grown out of the fog. Wooden houses with carved shutters, straw-covered roofs, narrow cobblestone lanes. No antennas, no power lines. As though time had frozen a century ago. A woman in an embroidered blouse waited for them on the outskirts. She smiled, but her eyes remained solemn.
You must be Lina and Marko.
She said softly.
We've been expecting you. I am Vershyna, the elder of the village.
Thank you for welcoming us.
Lina replied, stepping out of the car.
We won't get in the way.
Vershyna studied her for a long moment, as if weighing something unseen.
In the way. No, child. You've come just in time. The ritual begins the day after tomorrow. You'll witness everything.
A gust of wind lifted yellow leaves into a swirling circle at their feet. Their lodging was a small cottage at the edge of the village. Inside, it smelled of dried herbs and smoke. Embroidered cloths hung on the walls, strange symbols stitched into them, circles, sickle shapes, intertwined threads. In the corner stood an old mirror, its wooden frame darkened with age. The floor creaked under every step, and the low ceiling beams were carved with signs whose meanings neither of them knew. Lina immediately unpacked her equipment. Marko set down the bags and wandered to the window. Outside, the village moved with quiet purpose. Women carried buckets of water. Men sharpened scythes near the smithy. Children played in the yards, their laughter somehow muffled, as if drifting from far away. He noticed all the children wore identical red embroidered bracelets, just like the red thread lying on the table by the window.
Look at this,
Lina said, handing him the camera. On the screen was a shot of the main square. A tall wooden pillar wrapped in wheat and flowers stood at the center, encircled by a ring of white stones.
This is where the ritual happens. The blessing of the harvest.
Looks pagan.
Marko murmured.
It is. Vershyna says the ritual predates Christianity, passed down without interruption.
Awe sparkled in Lina's voice.
Do you realize how rare that is? A tradition that never broke. Not once.
Marko said nothing. Through the window, he watched the villagers move in quiet synchronicity, as though performing steps learned generations ago. No rush, no chaos. Even their gestures looked rehearsed. That evening, Vershyna invited them to dinner. The table overflowed, bread, honey, roasted vegetables, meat. But the strangest part was the way the villagers ate, slowly, silently, as if each bite belonged to some ancient ceremony. No conversation, only the scrape of spoons and the soft rustle of clothing.
You've arrived at a special time,
Vershyna said, pouring honey mead into clay cups.
This year's ritual will be different. The spirits of our ancestors have given us a sign. They spoke in the dreams of the elders.
What sign?
Lina asked, starting her recorder and placing it between them. Vershyna glanced at the device, then at Lina. Her smile widened.
You came on your own. That is how it always happens. The chosen find their way here when the moment arrives. No one summons them, they simply hear. In their blood, in their heart. They hear the whisper.
A shiver crawled down Marko's spine. He looked at Lina, but she was leaning forward, eyes shining, capturing every word. After dinner, Vershyna gave each of them a red thread.
Tie it on your wrist, for protection. The village welcomes you, but the spirits can be possessive of strangers. My grandmother wove these threads herself. They protect those who belong to the circle.
Lina tied hers instantly. Marko hesitated, but tied it anyway. The thread rested warm against his skin, too warm. That night Marko couldn't sleep. The silence here was wrong, too dense, too deliberate, as if someone had smothered every sound. Only now and then came a whisper, faint, barely audible. He couldn't tell whether it seeped from outside, or from the walls themselves, or the floorboards, or the earth beneath the house. Lina slept curled around her camera. Marko rose and approached the old mirror. His reflection stared back from the dim glass. He lifted his arm. The reflection lifted its own. Yet for a split second, Marko could swear the reflection moved first. Faster. He turned away and forced himself to lie down. Outside, the whispers grew clearer, and now he could hear words. His name, Lina's name, repeated and repeated, like a prayer, like an incantation. The village was awake, waiting, always waiting. Morning rose with thick, milky fog drifting through the houses like something alive. Lina was already outside filming. Empty streets, sunlight fighting through the haze, the silhouettes of trees. Marko woke to the sound of her footsteps. His head pounded as if he'd spent a night wrestling with something unseen. The red thread on his wrist felt tighter. He tried to loosen it. The knot wouldn't budge.
You hear anything last night?
He asked at breakfast.
Whoa.
She said.
Slept like a rock. Why?
I thought I heard voices, whispering outside.
She said.
It's the mountains, Marko. The forest. Lots of sounds here.
He didn't argue, but he knew it wasn't the wind. Vershyna arrived to lead them through the preparations. Villagers baked ritual bread, braided wreaths of wheat, prepared offerings for the spirits. Every movement calm, purposeful. Time here beat with a different rhythm.
The ritual has 3 stages.
Vershyna explained at the square.
First, cleansing. We invite the spirits of our ancestors. Second, exchange. We return part of the harvest to the earth, and the earth returns strength. Third, the circle. We unite with the spirits.
And who joins the circle?
Lina asked, recording. Vershyna turned to her, gaze steady.
All who belong. All who are bound to this land.
Can we film the final part?
Lina's voice shook with excitement.
You will not film it, child. You will be part of it. It is already decided.
Marko's heart kicked against his ribs.
We're here as observers. We can't take part in your ritual.
Vershyna smiled gently, but her eyes hardened.
No one comes to Vershyna by accident. You wanted truth? Here it is. Not behind a lens, but here, in the heart of the right.
Lina hesitated. Marko saw it. Part of her wanted to refuse. But another part, hungry for immersion, for belonging, was already leaning in. That evening Marko tried his phone. No signal, no internet. He checked the car. The battery was dead. The key turned in the ignition, but did nothing.
Lina, we have to go.
He said.
No.
She sat at the table, reviewing footage.
Go where? The ritual is soon. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
You don't get it? They don't plan to let us leave. Vershyna keeps talking about the chosen. We're not guests, Lina. We're part of whatever they're preparing.
Marko, you're overreacting. They're just protective of their traditions.
And the whispers? The mirror? The thread that won't come off?
She tugged at her own thread. The knot tightened. She pulled harder. The thread bit into her skin, but didn't break.
It's just a tight knot,
she said, but her voice trembled. Marko stepped toward the mirror. His reflection stared back. When he turned away, he saw, just for an instant, the reflection stayed behind, watching the back of his head. The whispers returned that night, louder. The villagers' voices rose in a slow, hypnotic melody. Words ancient and unknown, yet something in them resonated deep inside him. Marko looked out the window. A fire burned in the square. Figures in white moved around it. Hands joined, forming a circle. Always the circle. Vershyna stood at the center. She was looking straight at their house. Straight at him. She was smiling. By morning, Lina was gone. Marko woke to a silence too heavy to bear. Her things were still there. The camera stood on the table. But she was missing. He ran outside. The village was empty, streets abandoned. Only wind chasing leaves across the stones. He sprinted to the square. The fire had burned out, leaving a black ring. The wooden pillar stood wrapped in fresh wheat.
Lina.
He shouted. His voice shattered the silence and came back to him as an echo. But the echo didn't match his tone. It sounded like several voices answering at once. Vershyna appeared without a sound.
She's preparing,
She said.
and so must you.
Where is she?
Marko grabbed her shoulders.
What have you done?
Vershyna didn't flinch.
She came on her own. The whisper called her, as it will call you.
Marko shoved past her and ran into the forest. The path climbed between tall pines until it opened onto a clearing. A stone altar stood there, draped in moss. Offerings lay atop it, bread, honey, flowers, and a long red cord, woven from dozens of threads. Lina stood by the altar. She wore a white embroidered shirt he'd never seen, her hair loose and braided with wheat. She gazed into the forest, as if waiting.
Lina.
He grabbed her hand. She turned. Her eyes were not the eyes he knew. Empty, distant.
Marko,
She whispered.
you feel them, don't you? They're here. They've always been here.
Who?
Our ancestors. The spirits of the earth. They whisper. They say we belong to them. We always have.
He stepped back.
This isn't you. We're leaving. No.
We can't.
She said softly.
The road is gone. So.
He glanced behind him. The path had vanished, swallowed by an unbroken wall of forest. Villagers began emerging from between the trees. Slowly, silently, all dressed in white, all wearing red threads. Vershyna walked ahead, carrying a wreath of wheat and wildflowers.
The time has come.
She said.
The sun is already descending. The ritual cannot wait.
Marko stepped back, pulling Lina close to him, but she didn't resist. On the contrary, she reached her hand toward Vershyna.
I'm ready.
Lina whispered.
No.
Marko tried to hold her, but the peasants surrounded them in a circle. Their faces were calm, almost gentle. They were singing the same melody that had echoed at night, hypnotic, ancient, so old it felt like it existed before words. Vershyna placed the wreath on Lina's head.
You sought belonging, child. Here it is. You will never be alone again. You will become part of the earth, part of the circle, part of eternity.
Marko felt the red thread on his wrist tighten. He looked at Lina. She was smiling through tears, and he couldn't tell if they were tears of fear or happiness. The circle closed. They were led back to the village. Marko walked as if in a trance, his legs moving on their own, as though someone else controlled them. Lina walked beside him, holding his hand. Her palm was warm, but unfamiliar. The peasants surrounded them on all sides, not like guards, but like attendants, as if escorting them to a wedding. The square was already prepared. A large table covered with white cloth overflowed with food. Around a tall post lay a perfect circle of white stones and red threads. In the center burned a new bonfire, its flames dancing without any wind. Vershyna led them to the table. Other elders were already seated. All eyes were fixed on Marko and Lina with expectation.
Sit.
Vershyna said.
Eat the bread and honey. This is part of the ritual. You must accept the gifts of the earth before you become its gifts.
Marko wanted to refuse, but his hand reached for the bread on its own. He tore off a piece and placed it in his mouth. The bread was warm, slightly sweet, with a herbal aftertaste. Something in it compelled him to keep eating. He couldn't stop. Lina ate too, slowly, intently. Her eyes were closed, her face blissful.
Do you hear them?
She whispered.
Who?
Marko barely recognized his own voice.
All of them. Those who came before us. They're singing. They're rejoicing. We are completing the circle.
The sun began to set. The sky flared red and gold. The peasants rose from their seats and joined hands, forming a large circle around the bonfire. Vershyna led Marko and Lina to the center.
Stand here.
She said.
Face each other. Take each other's hands.
Marko looked at Lina. In the firelight, her face seemed unfamiliar, as if he was seeing her for the first time, or the last.
Repeat after me.
Vershyna began a chant. The words were ancient, root-deep, filled with power. The peasants joined in. Their voices merged into a single stream of sound. Marko felt his lips moving. He was singing. The words came on their own, as though he had always known them, as if they were written in his blood. Lina sang too, her voice clear and strong. She glowed. She was happy. The bonfire flared higher. The flames twisted into a spiral, forming a circle in the air. Inside the circle, Marko saw faces, hundreds, thousands, all who had stood here before, all who had become part of the earth. And he understood. They would never leave. The road wouldn't return. The car wouldn't start. The village wouldn't let them go, because they were no longer outsiders. They were part of the circle. The red thread on his wrist began to glow. The circle closed at midnight. Marko stood at the center, holding Lina's hands. Around them the peasants sang, their voices blending with the wind, the rustling trees, the breathing earth. The bonfire blazed so brightly the sky looked red. Vershyna approached them one last time. In her hand she held two sickles, old, patina-covered but sharp.
You sought authenticity.
She said softly.
You wanted to see how traditions live. Now you know. Traditions do not live in words, not in records. They live in those who carry them, in blood, in hearts, in the earth.
She placed the sickles in their palms.
Cut the last sheaf. Complete the circle.
Marko looked at Lina. Her face was serene. She nodded. Together they walked to the field where the last uncut sheaf of wheat stood, red in the firelight. The sickle felt heavy in Marko's hand. He raised it, and Lina raised hers. Together they brought the blades down. The wheat fell, and with it something else, something invisible but felt. A thread that had tied them to their old life snapped. The village erupted in song. Wild, joyful, primal, older than memory. Marko felt something changing inside him. Memories of the road, the city, the life before Vershyna blurred, becoming unreal, like someone else's dream. He looked at Lina. She was smiling, a true smile, with no shadow of doubt.
We're home.
She whispered. And Marko knew she was right. The village had accepted them. The earth had accepted them. The spirits had accepted them. The circle was complete. The whisper of the harvest no longer frightened him. It sounded like a lullaby,